was always these, old guys that were overweight and only ran three-point line to three-point line, and I never expected much more than that from them, and so and there was always the moments of silence for somebody's Achilles, or somebody tore their ACL or something, right? So and I don't know if Eric's here, but we even had a heart attack at one time. So fast forward 25 years, I had given up basketball probably 10 years ago. Just got too busy with kids. But then 3 of my kids are out of the house now, just got 1, so I thought, well, I don't have that excuse anymore. I should probably work on losing some weight, get in shape, and so I help with the high school football team at Gilbert, and in the off season, the kids that aren't in a sport, they play pickup basketball on Sunday nights against the coaches. So this is my second Sunday there. First one was somewhat successful. I'm good for one or two times down the court, and then I get a sub. And so I had a long weekend of ice fishing. And got back Sunday. One of the coaches called and said, "You coming up?" And I said, gosh, I don't know. He goes, "We need you." And I was like, for a sub, I'm not much help. Not much help in any sense anymore. So, but anyway, I go up there. I thought, I'm going to lose weight. This is all part of the process. And so go up there, and I've been up and down the court 10 times probably. So I've been in 5. And so I'm in my next one. I get a rebound. I thought I jumped pretty high, actually. And got it, ran down the court, got to the baseline in the corner, got the ball, cut really hard. I was beating a 17-year-old kid to the hoop. He happens to be one of our offensive linemen. He was 285. And then all of a sudden, I thought I got shot in my heel, dropped me. And I turned around to look if somebody kicked me or the ball hit me, and there's nothing back there. And then I immediately think, oh no, I've heard of this before. So I look at my calf to see if my Achilles is balled up, and so, but anyway, so it ended up being Achilles tendon tear. And so that happened about a week ago. So, but it was a couple days after that, I started thinking, I was like, when when I was playing with my dad, I was in my 20s, so he had to be about 45, 46. Those old guys were actually my age now, and were probably 30 pounds overweight, similar to me. So anyway, it comes full circle. So I should have been just that three-point guy, but I wasn't. Now, next time I will be, if I'm lucky. So anyway, wanted to introduce a new member here today. Stacy, can you help me with the name? Lenny Kraus. You. Okay, great. You want to stand up and say a little bit about yourself?
I'm not going to break my Achilles. It's an honor to be here. I've heard great things about this group. I'm fairly new to the community, and I can't wait to partner with some of you in this group. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenny. Thank you. Then I definitely want to thank Rich Higgins being here. He's our fire chief and the head of the inspection department, so we want to make sure that you're welcome. So thanks for being here. A lot of us work in our businesses, and we know a lot about what's going on with developments and job sites, currently, and what our guys and what our businesses are doing tomorrow and next week and next month. But we always get a strong attendance when we get to hear from people who are thinking next year, 5 years, and 10 years down the road. So I'm excited to have Dan Culhane with the Ames Alliance here today to speak about what's going on with the Ames and Central Iowa economy. So,
okay. Thank you. Well, I'm going to grab this microphone. We'll get rolling. Good afternoon, everybody. Jake, I'll tell you, I thought it was old guys that tore Achilles too, but my daughter, who's 27, was playing pickleball, and my oldest daughter, and she played collegiate soccer. She played club soccer for years. She chased all over the country, or chased us all over the country, and had a broken pinky one time, and that was the extent of her injuries. Then she decided to play pickleball with her new husband, and it was Cinco de Mayo. And they were playing pickleball, and they were just warming up, and that's all they did. She tore her Achilles, and she lives in Chicago. Can everybody hear me? Yes. She lives in Chicago, but she knew the healthcare was so good here, she came back here and had Dr. Greenwald operate on that thing, and she's back in good business, and she's back to her old self 9 months later. So good luck with your injury, and I know what you mean. I was at a concert a couple weeks ago with my wife at the White Sherman. Anybody heard of Big Head Todd? Yep. Talked about the old guys playing basketball. And during the concert, it's a good time. They're rocking, and my wife leans over, she goes, "Who are all these old people?" So yeah, I feel your pain about being an old guy on the basketball court. Well, listen, it's great to be here today. I shouldn't be shouting. Yeah, can you hear me in the back if I just talk normally? I tend to do that. I tend to shout people. I'm sorry. It's great to be here today. There's so much good going on in Ames in particular, but around the region. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about everywhere else that we work. If I came and spoke to you probably, 18 years ago, I've been here a while now, I would have talked about everything up to the borders of the corporate limits of Ames. And that's changed a lot over that time frame. And we've grown as an organization in part out of necessity for some of our smaller communities. There was a time, in fact 30 years ago when I got out of college here at Iowa State, I ran a countywide economic development organization up in North Iowa. And it was just me. And at that time it was enough. And today with social media and all the different things that go into supporting communities or counties or regions, you just need more infrastructure, you need greater team, greater bench strength. And we've certainly developed that over the years. So I'm gonna kick it off here. I'm gonna give you a little overview on who we are. Well, most of you are members of ours. We certainly appreciate that, and we appreciate the work that you do across our community and our region. But this is our team. When I got here many moons ago, I think I was the person number 5. So there was a CEO of the organization and 4 people. So we've grown a little bit in that time. And what I would tell you is that as we've grown, we've only grown because our responsibilities have expanded and broadened greatly. And I'll talk about that. And you'll see on the second line there right in the middle, your fearless leader from last year, Dylan Klein, who thought he might be late, but he got here just in time. So Dylan, thanks for joining us today. And Dylan's a very important cog in our wheel and does a lot of good work on behalf of the Ames and regional business community. Ames Regional Economic Alliance is our new brand, so we talk a lot about the area impact. I won't read those things to you, but those are things that we're doing every day. In fact, this morning, from an advocacy standpoint, I was talking to the governor's office on a piece of legislation that could be detrimental to economic development, and we've got a conference call with them later this afternoon. But I talk about advocacy, talk about leadership. And I think generally speaking, if you live in North Iowa where I used to be, people would assume, oh, Ames is perfect. There's perfect leadership. Everybody's hitting on all cylinders. Well, we all know that no matter where you go, there's a few warts, right? And so that's where leadership is such a big piece of the things that I think about in leading the organization, because we need effective leaders throughout the region. We need the home builders to be a strong organization, which I think you are. And you've got good leadership, and you've got engaged people, and I know you're not just here today because I'm here. Clearly, if you had known I was going to be here, the crowd might be half the size. But my point is that you folks are engaged in what you do because it's important to your bottom line, but you also understand greater good. You also understand the importance and the power of community, and that's where leadership is so important to the things that I think about and that we do, because leadership matters every day. Workforce development, community projects. I would tell you that 18 years ago, I came here to run the Ames Economic Development Commission. In fact, 2 senior leaders of this community took me to dinner before I even started and said, you just need to focus on the deal. Everything else take care of itself. Focus on the economic development deal. And maybe at that time that was probably true, but things have changed to where economic development is still important and it's still a high priority of what we do every day, but there's also an element of community development. And that's what you folks need in this room as much as you need the next job creator to come to the market that requires 10 people to come to town and build a house or buy a house or remodel a house. you also need the community development side of the ledger. And we've become a community development organization too. So we're involved in a lot of things. You're gonna see a lot of things in these slides here today that talk about community development. When I got here 18 years ago, nobody talked to me about the farmer's market, you know, but a few years into my job here, the university actually called and said, hey, we need a better farmer's market. Go create one, we'll give you a little money for it. And so I took the money and I helped underwrite a person to lead that. And so if you come downtown on a Saturday morning between the 1st of May and the first part of October, you'll see 3,000 to 5,000 people here to support the Ames Main Street Farmers Market. And Kevin Kinsler was a strong advocate for that a long time ago. We talk about that all the time. But if people come downtown to see Gene Peterson, who does an absolutely rock star job of leading that for us, and then all those vendors, and that's community, that creates community, and that's why the farmers market, while not core to our mission by any stretch, is an important piece of the things that we're doing all the time. Sometimes I feel like we're a management organization. In many ways we are. You know, we manage all these organizations that you see here, and we've got contracts with the vast majority of them. You'll see the Ames Foundation on the far right here. That's an organization we provide some staffing to them. We think that organization is critically important to this community, but they should spend their dollars focused on raising, or spend their time on raising money for good projects like the Miracle Playground and things of that nature, rather than trying to manage the day-to-day operations of running a foundation and keeping compliant with a variety of things related to running a 501c3 organization. So there's an example of where we'll do the back office work because we've got the bench strength to do that, and they can focus on things that make our community better. And I should tell you, as we go through here, feel free to stop me. I'm going to run through these slides, and I hope we'll have a good dialogue back and forth about what's on your minds and the things that we should be doing to help and support you going forward. Some 24 highlights. You know, every year I say it's the best year ever, and I generally mean that. But 2024 was really a spectacular year for the types of things that we work on. You can't talk about 2024 without talking about Daisy out of Dallas, Texas, that did a national site search for a new location. And the long story made short is that we won. Boone won. The Boone community won that project over a site in South Dakota and a site, I believe, in Nebraska. Early in the process. But Daisy will be a fabulous shot in the arm for this region as they break ground this spring. And they'll be under construction for about 2 years. And then they'll be operational. I'll talk a bit more about them in a moment. Hamilton County joined our organization, and that was really great. And it was even better because they called us. I think too often organizations like ours can call a neighboring community or county and say, hey, we're smart enough for both of us, so why don't you come join us? Well, it doesn't work. You know, but they came to us and said, hey, we think you can probably help us. And I said, yeah, I think we probably can. And so we went through the process, and it was like a 4-week process. It went fast. They knew the answer was yes before they called me from their standpoint. And so we've kicked it off really well there. We're excited about the work we can do in Hamilton County and Webster City. And that's going well. I mentioned the rebrand, and then here's another thing that would not have been core to our mission. And you may or may not watch the Discovery Channel, but RV There Yet is a couple in an RV that drives across the country, visits different markets, then showcases those over. I think it's a 22-minute TV program that we helped underwrite with the Discover Ames and a few others, the Boone County Convention Bureau, and they were here on a perfect football weekend. That was the Baylor weekend in October. The weather couldn't have been better, and that premieres on April 19th. It's a Saturday morning at 7:30 in the morning. You get up that early, which I bet most of you do, and you have nothing else to do, which is probably not true. Check that out. Also, if you want to see it, Discover Ames, our convention visitors organization here in town, they are going to be, I believe, sharing that piece 2 days earlier at their annual meeting. So you'll get a couple chances to see that, but it was a great way to showcase what we already know. This is a really good market, and the cool thing about this was it wasn't just about Ames. They were in Boone County, they were on the High Trestle Trail, they rode the Rail Explorers carts, they did a wide variety of things around our region. And if we're going to be an effective regional organization, it's things like that that augment and amplify the work that we're doing. There's Dylan up on the right. I think Eric put that there just because I was speaking to you guys today. Maybe. We've got an annual report. Most of you have probably seen it. It's been sent out to our membership. You can find it on our website. The whole rebrand was a very large undertaking for our organization. I used to say, hi, I'm Dan. I'm with the Ames Chamber of Commerce and the Ames Economic Development Commission. Now I can simply go into a lot of these communities and say, I'm Dan, I'm with the Alliance. We feel like the Alliance is a better reflection of who we are because it's inclusive. Oftentimes, if I go to a city council meeting in Boone, and say, I'm from the Ames Economic Development Commission, you know, oh great, the guy from Ames is here. We wanted to be inclusive, and so our rebrand really helped us catch up with the work we were already doing. And so consequently, I've been pleasantly surprised by actually how easy it's been, this transition. It's probably more clunky for us as a staff internally than it has been for any of our board members or our members like all of you. It's been very well received. We're grateful for that. A couple things also from 2024, and all these things are measurements that we will continue to pursue going forward. And so we can talk about 25 and beyond as well, but we started tracking external funding to companies and projects and communities that we work in. So if we get a $500,000 grant from the state for the Treehouse Village over at the Iowa Arboretum, we help them get some extra money to finish that project. We're tabulating that to show impact of what we can do. Because we can chase economic development projects, we can do Chamber Golf Day and Chamber Business After Hours, those things are all important. But it's so many other things where we can add value to a community, to a business trying to expand their business and finding some grant money, to a redevelopment project. There's a wide variety of ways in which we can insert ourselves and be an extension of that person's business without being in front of the business. And so you'll see we amassed just over $56 million in external funding last year. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money, but Landis did a big project in rural Boone County. Of course, the Daisy project generated a lot of tax assistance. We secured a lot of workforce housing tax credits too. And that's what, if you're not familiar with what workforce housing tax credits are, talk to Dylan, talk to me, talk to Brenda Dreyer. We'll help you become more educated on those because they are an important tool in going forward in housing development across our region. $913 million in capital investment. The vast majority of that is Daisy, as they've pledged an investment amount to the state for the agreement they've got with the state. That's a big piece of that. You see MG Biologics. A lot of you might not know who that is. It's a great little company out in rural Boone County. We helped with an expansion. Ag Leaders got a new building south of the Ames Airport. It's kind of an R&D facility for them where they keep their equipment that works out in the fields and in their test fields. And so there's a lot of good things going on. GRS and NextAir up in Story City is under construction, expansion right now, which is a really cool project. There's just a lot of stuff going on. If I got up here and didn't talk about business retention, I wouldn't be doing my job. A big part of what we do is talking to our existing primary sector companies because they have choices. Iowa State University is not going to pack up and move to Mexico, right? Or develop a satellite location someplace else. But a Danfoss, a Barilla, pick your favorite large company. Now that we're in Hamilton County, Van Dees, there's a whole host of companies. We want to always know how they're doing. We don't need to know all their business. We don't need to see their financials, but we want to make sure that if there's an issue or an opportunity, they're maximizing that by using us to support them. That's where the business retention and expansion program, which has been around forever, we try to really hard to touch all those companies every year. And so we've done it by committee. I don't love that. For a lot of years, I've had one person do it. And that way, that person has the connection with Lenny, who runs the company, and it's between those two people, and that's where it stays. But if there's an opportunity for growth of Lenny's company, my person's come back to the office and Dan, there's an opportunity here to help this company expand their footprint. That's where we get engaged. That's how we know what's going on, is we pay close attention to those existing companies. And the projected job creation from the projects that we worked last year is 311. That's not a big number, but so many of the projects we work on right now are not job intensive. They're capital intensive, and in some respects that's okay. I think we always need to be creating new jobs in the market, but these are jobs that we were involved with. A lot of you created jobs last year in your organizations we had nothing to do with. We're not talking about those. You know, Danfoss probably added some people last year that they didn't have a project with us, but they added 20 people. So there's jobs being created in this market all the time. That's one of the things that really gives me consternation about this community, is that we are a job center. You all know that. There's great jobs, you know, throughout this community and throughout this region. We need more of those people to live here, right? I mean, that's our biggest challenge. A CEO from one of our companies recently said, hey, almost embarrassingly, she said, hey, I live somewhere, I live in the Des Moines area. I said, okay, that's cool. I'm kind of over that now because it happens a lot. But she said, Dan, I had really 2 houses that would fit the needs of my family. And I said, I can appreciate that, but that's why, and I'm preaching to the choir here, you know we all need more infrastructure for housing, right? And that's a big piece of the things that we're thinking about more than ever today than we were either 5 or 10 years ago. A few things, most of you probably know a lot about these things, but some things that opened in the last year that we either had a hand in or we just are proud to celebrate and promote them. The Nevada Fieldhouse is a cool project. If you haven't seen it, get over there and take a look at that. We had nothing to do with that. I think one of our affiliates, Nevada EDC, probably did. But cool project. Every one of our communities could use one of those. Pivot Bio out in the Research Park, a beautiful facility. On the top right there, you'll see the Wiffles ribbon cutting that Chuck was heavily involved in, and that's an awesome family-owned business that'll continue to grow and continue to invest in our community. And if you want to hear their CEO, the guy in the middle there, speak, he's going to be our Ag Breakfast speaker in March during Ag Month. But John Wiffles is his name, and we're looking forward to having him. On the bottom left, the Iowa Arboretum in the Treehouse Village. Anybody been to the Treehouse Village yet? If you haven't, you gotta go. It's cool. I'm gonna get the numbers wrong here, but I'm gonna throw them out anyway. Last year, from the 1st of January to the September 4th, the Iowa Arboretum had around 1,800 visitors. Not a lot. From September 5th to October 25th, 28th, they had over 10,000. And so the Treehouse Village, what I love about it is that, you know, it's for kids, but it's for people of all ages and all capabilities. And so you're seeing droves of people go to that now because it's fun. And not that the Iowa Arboretum isn't fun on its own, but combine those 2 things together, it's a pretty good place to go and hang out for an afternoon. So that is an asset for our region that we celebrate because it's one more thing. And as we're trying to attract the next family to move to this community and buy a house here, it's something in proximity to Ames that's really easy to get to. And so we talk a lot about that. We helped the History Museum with what they call a CAT grant. It's through the State Economic Development Department. 60 Forward opened up, had nothing to do with that. And I'm a little offended by the number. I was hoping to be 80 forward, 90 forward, because I'm not that far. I can see 60 down the road and I'm going, come on, really? Just kidding. Really, I'm not, though. Really, 60 forward? How about 90 forward? But it's a great facility. If you haven't been there, as a community, we should be proud of that. It's a great piece of infrastructure that was long overdue. And then, of course, the Alliant Energy Digital Ag Innovation Lab, they cut the ribbon on that a couple weeks ago, and that is a tremendous asset that we helped broker the deal with Alliant Energy on that, but otherwise had virtually nothing to do with it. But it's a real rich asset for agriculture innovation being done here rather than at Purdue or the University of Illinois or someplace else. So all these pieces of infrastructure are critically important. I can't talk about the things that are going on or being contemplated if I don't talk about the link. We're hopeful the link will see some movement this year. That's a game changer for downtown. It really is. You know, the more we can get invested in the downtown, the more people that choose to live here as residents or sleep here as hotel guests, the better off and even more vibrant downtown Ames will be. So we're looking forward to that. Sidetown got approval here a couple weeks from the Board of Regents. You probably all know this stuff, but we're excited about that too because we think that also creates one more thing that if you can find a house you like and you've got a choice to live here versus someplace else because you're already working here, this might be something else that attracts you to coming and living in the Ames community. Let's talk about Daisy a little bit more, because I don't want to just fly over it, and yet I don't want to bore you to tears with it either. But what's interesting about this project is that when that process started, they were going to build 650,000 square feet. I forget the number of jobs. It was a couple hundred jobs. I don't think the jobs have changed much, but the capital investment was around $560 to $600 million, which is still a lot of money, right? In the last week, we've learned the building is now 1.2 million square feet. The jobs are about I think we're around sort of 300 still, and the capital investment is over $1 billion. And you know, I've been around a long time. I've worked some really big projects, but they were never that capital intensive. I worked a power plant a million years ago, and I don't think they even hit $1 billion. So this is a cool project. They're breaking ground this year. They'll have 80 contractors on site. They'll have 750 people on site at their peak, during their peak of construction. I think my power plant project had 1,500. If you know Mason City, Clear Lake at all, there's a power plant that sits out on the Avenue of the Saints, and at one time that was the third largest community in Sarasota County between Mason City, Clear Lake, and then the power plant site. So that'll certainly have a positive impact on our region. And this is a fact that's probably useless, but I find it kind of amusing. When they take down all the stainless steel to build their tanks and all their infrastructure, it'll move the price of stainless steel globally, is what their consultant said. So I thought that was pretty cool. Great project. We threw everything at them that we could. We knew it was good for Boone, but we knew it was good for Ames too. We knew it was good for the state. The governor's office loves this project. We did a video overnight with about 7 different people, from Rob Denson to Debbie Durham, President Winterstein, all holding a cup of sour cream or cottage cheese or something, and talking about how they love Daisy and they couldn't wait till they chose Boone for this project. And then we sent it to them, you know, and said, hey, you know, it isn't just our team that thinks this is a pretty good idea. We've got a lot of people that can actually move mountains for you that want you here too. And so a really fascinating project, and we're proud it chose Boone in this region rather than somewhere in South Dakota or Nebraska. You've got the jingle in your head, don't you? Do a dollop of Daisy.
How many cows do they support?
So that's a great question, and I know that, kind of that useless fact, but I know that. When this is at its peak production, they will need 43,000 cows milked 3 times a day to satisfy their raw inputs. Now, you probably haven't seen any dairies here in Story County, but there's a very large one if you drive east on 30, just across the county line into Marshall County. That is Marshall Ridge Farms. The Blood family owns that facility. They are doubling their capacity. I think they'll be at around 16 or 18,000 cows. And that'll satisfy this project in the near term. But in the long term, you'll probably see 1 or 2, if not 2, additional facilities built somewhere in the region. And I've been candid with them. I said, I wouldn't spend a lot of time looking around Story County. I just don't think that there's the political appetite for that. But we've got that in Hamilton, we've got that in Boone, we've likely got that in Greene County as well. So we will help them as much as they want us to in the site selection for that as well. Other questions on Daisy?
What does that workforce look like? A lot of manufacturing?
Yes, the question is, what does the workforce look like? So they will bring 30 people from other plants, about 10%, that will locate here for a period of time to get the plant up and running. And they've already identified the plant manager. She was selected, I think, from another industry here a few months ago. So she's at one of their plants. They've got plants in Wooster, Ohio, Arizona, south of Phoenix, and then one in Texas as well. And this plant will be as big as Wooster. Wooster's been online for 10 years, and contractors have never left there. They keep building on that site. And so they're building today for the future with this facility too, because they'll also, part of that the expansive square footage is the warehouse space they'll have on site as well. So on those many production jobs, their pledge for wages is around $28 an hour. They pay 100% of insurance, healthcare premiums, healthcare, your, what do you call it?
401k.
Yeah, your healthcare, you've got a gap you gotta pay. What is it?
Deductible.
Deductible, thank you, thank you. Rich?
How long ago was it you started talking to him, first started talking to him?
So this went, how long did it take, how long did the process take? This went pretty fast. We responded to them, I think Dylan sent the initial response in August of 23.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
They reached out in November, wanted to meet in December. We spent 2/3 of a day with them then. They were back a couple weeks later. Candidly, there's not a worse time to show people around than winter, right? It doesn't, I mean, come on Baylor weekend on a fall football Saturday. Come anytime, but you know, it worked. And they brought their CEO, their COO, and their HR person. The HR person signed off that day and said, this is a good location for us, I don't need to come back. So we felt good about that. But then we had to go through the process of making sure that our offer and our financial assistance was competitive for them to continue to keep us in the mix, which we did. They visited another time more. It's a family-owned company. They brought the grandson in. He's 40, and you would have thought he was going to the North Pole. He had moon boots on, this big heavy coat, a big hat. It was like probably 28 degrees that day. It was pretty nice here that day. But he lives in Texas, and he's a good dude. But we showed him around, and he said, hey, you don't need to spend a lot of time on me. I'm not deciding where this is going anyway. He was pretty honest about it. The CEO and the COO are both non-family members. They've both been there forever. And but they care for Daisy like they own it. And so that was a pretty cool process. So it didn't take that long. From the first visit in December until, was it May? Yeah. We went down there right around Easter. We went down to Texas to try and close the deal because they brought their CFO into the mix, and he had not been involved. And I didn't feel like he liked us. I was like, this guy hates us. And he was always ragging on us or ragging on Dylan or Brenda, and you know, I was like, this is going in the wrong direction. And so we went down to Dallas with Debbie Durham, the State Development Director, Patrick Tomka, who's at the Governor's Office, myself, Brenda, and then Bill Steer, the City Administrator in Boone. We didn't take the governor because the governor, and this isn't just Kim Reynolds, all governors never go during the negotiation because sometimes they can say things that you can't deliver on. And so, because I called Debbie, I said, hey, I want Governor Reynolds to go on this trip. She says, no. I said, come on. I said, she can help us close this deal next Tuesday. She said, Dan, she said, this isn't just about Kim Reynolds, it's about any governor. You get them in that room, they get excited, they go, we'll do that, yeah, we can do that too. And then we get back in the airplane and go home and realize, oh shit, we can't do that. So we kept the governor out of the mix, but the governor had talked to them a couple times throughout the process where we just said, hey, would you call Vince, who was the CEO of the company, and tell him, hey, we still care about this. And Reynolds Kramer was a big help in this too. Reynolds was the chair of our board last year, and or 2 years ago now. Yeah, 2 years ago now. But Reynolds was intricately involved in the site visit and in some of those things too, and was an advocate given the amount of Daisy products they buy too. In fact, they hadn't quite yet announced, and Fairway didn't get a truckload or a quarter of a truckload of Daisy products. And so Reynolds sent the CEO an email, and he copied me, and he said, hey, Vince, if your facility was down the street from our distribution center, this wouldn't be a big deal. So, but given that it's not, this is kind of a big deal today because we went to send the trucks out, and we didn't have your product on them because your truck didn't get here. So we had a lot of fun with this process. It's always fun when you win. You know, we wouldn't even talking about this if we had lost. Ask me about Jack Link's beef jerky sometime. They went to Perry, Georgia instead of coming here. But this has been a really good project, and I think it'll be, it's certainly a game changer for the city of Boone proper, but it's really good for the region, for our state, because I think it'll grow an industry that has mostly declined here in Iowa, and that's the dairy industry. Housing, let's finally get to what you folks really want to hear about is, you know, I'm really excited about the work we're doing in housing. Candidly, I want to do more work in housing in Ames. We had applications in Ogden, Boone, Nevada, Huxley, those communities last year. Almost all of those got some level of funding through the Iowa Workforce Housing Tax Credits. Debbie Durham, who's a friend of mine, called and said, Dan, where's the Ames application? Where are the Ames applications for workforce housing tax credits? I said, we don't have any projects that qualify. And so consequently, we need to work harder here in Ames because it's awesome that you see Nevada and Boone. There's 3 projects in Boone there. Boone's on fire, but Boone is so quick to say yes because they know the impact of this, not only for Daisy. They were saying yes about housing even before Daisy came to fruition. And so that's where we're excited about the various projects we're working on across the region. We've also got a very large project going into Webster City already. I want to say that's 218 units. And it's a duplex development. The Kading company out of Altoona, Bondurant, is leading that. That's what Kate's Landing is as well. And there's also a project pending for Nevada. And Boone's under construction. So there's just a lot of activity as it relates to housing, which is great. There's just not a lot of things like this anyway. I know there's a lot of single family homes and some of you folks are doing spec homes and we're grateful for that. And a lot of, certainly not a custom, but man, we need more things like this to support you as builders and developers in our market, but also support the market in general, because what do we need more than anything? Housing and childcare. Those are the 2 things that come up, and people in general, right? We need more people. But we'll attract more people if we've got more housing. And I feel insulting even saying that to you folks, but that's the world we're living in. And then you see down the bottom, there's a large project in Colo, another one in Nevada. Roland, I think that just got through their city council, didn't it, Dylan, a couple weeks ago? With Greg's working on that. There's a nice subdivision going up there. And Webster City is much like Boone was a few years ago. They're saying, Dan, team, Adi, whatever you can do, whatever we can do to support a project coming here rather than going someplace else, just tell us what we need to do, we'll do it. You know, and what I like about those communities is they're not saying, hey, come break all of our rules, we don't care. No, these people, these private developers, folks like yourselves are coming in and saying, well, there's an opportunity here and you're not gonna hold us up forever. We'll follow all the rules. And we understand that because most of those people in Webster City and in Boone, other places, they're from there or they're from the region, you know? We have very few developments where people come to town and they leave and we never see them again, right? They live here, so they want to do something that is effective, is sustainable long-term, and something they can be proud of too, because they can point to it 20 years from now and say, we built that 20 years ago, and it's still a thriving property in our community. That's what I think, there's a different level of hunger in some of our smaller communities because they haven't seen the churn that we've provided to them. And I say we, that's probably not fair. There's so many factors that come into that. But we're making connections to people like yourselves, to communities that have never thought they'd have a chance to talk to anybody like any of you. I mean, the development that Chuck's working on in Boone, that was a conversation between the city administrator who said, I'd like to meet Chuck. We can do that, you know, and it came together. I don't know if it was fast, it's never fast enough, right? But the point is, you make those connections and you say, hey, you guys go to work now, see if you can figure something out. And they did. And at the end of the day, it's going to be a great project that'll support that community. Hopefully it supports the private development community so they want to reinvest on the next opportunity. That's our role in this process, is facilitating and getting people together and say, hey, if there's an impediment, let us know what it is and we'll try and figure it out. And we're not going to bonk the county or any of the cities over the head and say, just do it, you know, don't worry, don't sweat it, just do it. We know they have to eat too. You know, we know they've got rules to follow and they've got codes to follow, and we appreciate that and respect that. Dylan is the liaison between the city of Ames and the private development community, and that's Dylan's job. You know, it's not to say the city's way out of line here. You know, it's just find common ground where they can move forward, and vice versa. We can't be beating on the developers either. You know, we've got to work together, and Dylan's doing a good job of facilitating those relationships. So that people can move through that process. Hopefully it's easier than it was many moons ago. It's never perfect, but we're trying to make progress all the time. On the left there, you'll see something about a housing needs assessment. For those workforce housing tax credits, if you're doing that in a community, they have to have an updated housing needs assessment. And so we're making sure that our communities have those, so that we don't get to the midnight hour and they go, oh yeah, you don't get to check this box because your housing needs assessment isn't up to date. And those are pretty easy to get done. We don't do them internally. We've got a group that does. Is it Iowa State, Dylan? Somebody at Iowa State's doing those for us.
Yeah, it's Department of Iowa State.
Yeah, but it's local, so it's easy to make connections with them and say, hey, we need this we're doing one for Huxley right now. And Huxley really needs it. As you know, it's growing like crazy. And but they need an updated housing needs assessment to facilitate those workforce housing tax credits. Now I'll tell you, I've seen the legislation, it's not public yet, but the workforce housing tax credit dollars are much, much larger for next year. But the problem is, people like us are talking about them all the time, so there's gonna be more interest and more applications. And we had some good projects that didn't get funded, so as much as I like talking about the projects that did get funded this last year, there were some that didn't get money. And that's gonna happen, and that is a real drag, because we love all those projects. We know how important all those are to our region. So when somebody doesn't get funded, you know, we don't ultimately get to decide who gets money, but we try to influence all of the applicants we've got. So if you've got an application, I can promise you we're gonna work hard to try and get you some money through that workforce housing tax credit program. Looking at 25, and I could go into this for a long time, but I would just tell you that Prairie View Industrial Center is the corridor between Barilla and Verbio on Lincoln Way. Whiffles is out there, and someone said to me, yeah, the Whiffles out there, that's great. Somebody from the city of Ames. So that's all we've got out there. I said, yeah, but there's lots of opportunities. We've had a number of, it's been a finalist for a number of projects in the last couple of years. We had a, gosh, $2 or $3 billion solar panel manufacturer out of Italy that we were a finalist location for that. They ended up going to a site outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I'm really happy to say they didn't build it there. They decided to pull the project, which maybe, is that wrong that I felt better that I didn't go there either? And we worked hard on that. Alliant Energy worked hard on that. That was a big project. Capital intense, thousands of jobs. It was one of those where I actually took a call from the governor and Debbie Durham. They said, we need a strategy on how we're gonna speak to this if this happens. I said, we sure are. Because I'm gonna have a lot of people that support our organization, like all of you, going, where are you gonna find 3,000 people, Dan? So that was a transformational project for our state had it come to fruition, but happy to say that it didn't happen at all. So nonetheless, Prairie View has been a finalist location. Jack Link's beef jerky, which that probably wasn't the best project in the world, but it was an opportunity to get something moving out there. They were very good jobs, but they weren't daisy jobs. They were very good jobs. But what's interesting is they went to a town called Perry, Georgia, and they got money from the state to pay $13 an hour. And so they would have never found any, as you all know, they wouldn't have found anybody in this market for $13 an hour. Our high school kids working at McDonald's make more than $13 an hour. And so things work out for a reason, I think, and that was probably okay that they went to Georgia, and hopefully they're making lots of beef jerky down there. So Prairie View Industrial Center, there's a lot of activity that we really can't talk about today out there, but you're going to see something pop out there, something more. Alliant Energy also has a couple parcels out there they wanted to buy. They're close to getting those acquired. Not done, but there's some things that need to happen there yet too. And so that's going to be a very robust corridor. And if I had thought of it, I'd have put a map of that corridor, and then south down to Highway 30. There's a lot of ground there too, and we've encouraged the city of Ames. We submitted a letter to them in December, encouraging them to put the infrastructure in going down towards Highway 30. You know, it's sort of interesting. That's a new interchange on a 4-lane, and you can go anywhere in this country, and before the bridge is done, the infrastructure's in, because everybody knows, man, there's going to be development out there. And right this minute, there's no plan today for infrastructure out there. So that's what we're encouraging, is saying, hey, this could really be a game changer for that Prairie View Industrial Corridor, but also for all those existing industries that sit out there, right? They're going to require services and proximity to operations. This is a logical thing to do. And so we've also got interested landowners out there too that say, yeah, you know, we think if the right opportunity comes along, we'd sell. You know, too often public infrastructure gets deployed, and people that get the infrastructure access say, well, I'm not selling anyway. Well, what's the point of deploying the infrastructure if there's no willing sellers? We know we've got willing sellers out there, so we're hopeful that'll move forward. We're certifying a site in Webster City. That'll be at least 100 acres. There's some real opportunities up there too, and we think shining the light on what they've got in terms of infrastructure and available sites and a workforce, an affordable workforce, will probably generate opportunities for the Webster City community. Candidly, they've not had a lot of economic development luck in the last several years, and we don't have a magic wand, but we do think with a consistent message and consistent connectivity to a number of key people that we work with routinely, we'll see more activity there. Regional housing, we talked about that, and then generally speaking, there's lots of things that we don't work directly on. Dylan might have a hand in some of these things more so because of his relationship to the city on behalf of our team, but you know, there's a couple quick stars that are gonna be popping up here. This is public record, but there was I think there's a McDonald's, another McDonald's going to town. Those are things that, you know, don't keep you up at night, but you know, you don't jump out of your chair because, oh, that's gonna be great for our community. But that kind of investment, that constant churn of investment is what we need. And that's where I think we stop and start too much, in particular in the Ames market. And I think DRC should have 5 to 7 projects on it every week. There should be constant churn. And I don't know if I can do that on my own. I know I can, because if I had, I would have done it by now. But we need to keep that churn going, because as those things go, so go your businesses, right? The more stuff that's happening here, the more activity we generate for the market and for the region. And so that's why I'm so bullish on continuing to push for activity in Ames proper. And we love working around the region because it's really fun. It reminds me of a million years ago working in a community in North Iowa where it was like, Dan, go, let's do this. That's fun, you know. And again, not at the expense of property rights of neighbors, of breaking rules, anything like that. But let's find a way to say yes that makes sense for everybody. So that's where I'm bullish on Ames and this region. I think Stacy, I think I'm done. But I'll be happy to entertain questions, comments. No criticism, please, though. Fire away, come on.
Have you toured Bloods?
The question was, have I toured Bloods? That's the dairy over in Marshall County. I have. I washed my car before I went out there too. Never do that. I'll tell you, it's, you know, as those things go, it's impressive. They've got a upper level observation lounge, and I'll probably tell you folks things you already know, but the cows go in the same line every time they get milked, and they know who's first and who's second. It's fascinating to see how that process works. So while it's highly automated, it's still a lifestyle for people that are doing the hard work there. It's really impressive. I was surprised how clean it was. And there's not much odor there because of the digesters they have there. So you really don't notice that like you might think you would. So, and they're good operators. They're well regarded by Daisy. Daisy knew them beforehand, but here's an interesting thing we learned too in that process is that I assumed that the Blood family, Marshall Ridge Farms, their milk was going to AE in Des Moines. And they said, oh, we backfill when their regular dairies can't produce enough milk. Otherwise, all of their milk was going to Wisconsin. And I said, how do you make money on that? They said, well, we really don't. You know, it's a harder equation when you have to ship your milk to Wisconsin. And so it was sort of interesting because I let them in right away. I said, hey, I need you guys to help educate me and my team on what we need to say to Daisy on this aspect of the project. And they did, and I know they wanted to call me every day and say, hey, what are you hearing? But they call. I usually try to call them, so they didn't have to call me. But I knew they were chomping at the bit because there was nothing guaranteed, even if Daisy came here, that they'd get to sell milk there. But what's pretty cool is I think they're moving towards a process where they will be the primary provider in the near term which is awesome, because if you've met Kevin and Alex Blood, you'll know these are awesome people. They're great producers. They love the land. It's really, really cool. This project came together just for them. And so, yeah, I have toured their facility. I learned a lot. I wore the wrong shoes. I washed my car. I
They
wasn't
just
thinking.
doubled in size like 2 years ago.
Yeah,
When they
yeah.
put that other new one in, so they're gonna double again.
They are. They are. And
It's huge.
what I think is good for them is they've had a long history with their neighbors that's positive. And so they weren't talking out of school when they told Daisy, we think we can get an expansion of our dairy done, because they're highly engaged with their neighbors, which I can appreciate that.
I know he buys up some of them houses out there too for his guys to work.
Yeah. They've got a
We've
lot
done
of,
some work for them.
they've got a
some
lot of
houses
housing.
we want, yeah.
They own a lot of their housing for their people.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yep. Kevin?
So back to housing, if you did have your magic wand, what would be the next best thing you could do in Ames to stimulate more housing?
I think we certainly need more land zoned for multifamily. I think we've got the same developer out of the Des Moines area that said we'd love to do a project in Ames. But the requirement or the lack of land available for something like that makes that a challenge, you know? I hear anecdotally from the private development community about pioneer infrastructure and some of the things like that, but you know, the city did implement a tax abatement program. Not sure that moves the needle a lot, but maybe it's a start. And I think more things, Kevin, it's like a lot of things that we do at our office. I'll tell someone I hire them, I say, hey, every day I need you to be thinking about how you make this better. We've got a new Main Street guy, and I said, Travis, I said, you've got one thing every day you've got to think about when you get out of bed. How do I make downtown Ames better and Campus Town? He's got some responsibility there too. It's like housing. Who's thinking about housing collectively every day to make it better? And that's where I think as a community, we need more of that. Because I do see that in some of our smaller communities where they're like, and they've got a lot of things on their plates too, but they are constantly thinking about how do we get people to live in Boone rather than Ames, or in Huxley rather than Ames, or Huxley rather than Ankeny, you know, and Ankeny is not the enemy. The Des Moines Metro is not the enemy. Thankfully, there's plenty of housing. I mean, not plenty, but there's probably more choice in the metro than there might be in the little region that we serve between Boone, Story, and Hamilton County. But I think that's what we need, is we need more choice. We need to stimulate that, and how you do that exactly. I think if there were 6 of me in the city council, you know, we probably do a lot more of that. But I also understand there's a balance. I do. So that isn't a knock on anybody. But I do think we're cautious as a community, and we shouldn't throw caution to the wind, but we could be more aggressive. Fire up! You got another day to go. This is Thursday. Usually I speak on Friday. There's one more day to go here. Anything else?
Dan, as you're
Yeah.
looking for organizations that may have interest in the Ames area, do you limit kind of the exposure of what type of industry you may consider?
Question is, do we limit the types of industries that can locate here? I would tell you we do. There's if they're very sewer and water intense, that's a tough spot to put the city in. They've made it clear to me since I got here. We don't want someone using 2 million gallons of water a day. And where I came from, the attitude was, well, they can have 2 million gallons of water a day, but we'll just build a bigger plant. We'll add on to the plant. And that's what they did. We had enormous water users in Mason City that are still there. So we are mindful of that, you know. Daisy did not get a lot of encouragement from us for Ames because of their water consumption, and I don't remember exactly what it is now, Kevin, but it's significant, and their wastewater. And Boone is going to upgrade their wastewater facility to handle a lot of the waste. They'll still pre-treat inside the plant, but as those things come out of the plant, there's still more treatment that goes along with it through the municipal process, and so they're having to spend considerable money, in excess of $20 million, to upgrade wastewater and water for not just Daisy. It'll also support the community long term, but right now, today, it's for that plant. You know, we wouldn't try to attract a rendering plant to Prairie View Industrial Center. There's things like that. You know, there's just certain things that don't fit here. And I respect that completely. And I also respect the fact that, you know, if I take a 2 million gallon per day water user to the city of Ames, it's a non-starter. I get that. And so we try to find other places. The challenges you have in some of these smaller communities, 2 million gallons a day might be what their whole community uses, you know? And so you try to find a balance. And there are times where we just say, Dylan responds to most of our requests. He'll say, we can't facilitate that project. And it's a little easier to do that because the phone rings a lot here. We have good economic activity. This is an old story that I used to tell, and I'm telling it right now again. But you know, when I was in Mason City, I could call out, but nobody called me. And that's the thing I noticed more than anything about Ames is that this is a vibrant market. It's an active market. And so we get calls frequently. Hey, we're thinking about doing this. We think it might make sense in Ames, or we want to be within the shadows of Iowa State University. And so what can you do for us? We get a lot of those. And we try to facilitate all this because we want them all to come here, right? We do. But we do have times though where a project comes and it's like, oh, we had a slaughtering facility. That was in the last 90 days. And nobody in the state really wanted to touch that. And I actually called the person. I said, you didn't mean to send that to us, did you? Because I said, we're not chasing that. Politically, we can't. We just can't. And they would use an enormous amount of water, sewer, a whole host of things. And so the sad thing about meatpacking is it has to happen somewhere. We all like to eat, and so it has to happen somewhere. And that's where I'm hopeful. I don't have any information, but I'm hopeful this company is at least considering the Perry facility that's been vacated. That's a great piece of infrastructure. It probably needs some modernization, but I'd rather things like that. If I had Debbie Durham's job, I'd be encouraging those people, look at our existing infrastructure and go there. Because there's an appetite and an understanding, the culture's there already for meatpacking. So let's try and reinvest in those places where it's been, rather than trying to put it in a university town, which I can only imagine the blowback on that one. Well, Jake, I think I'm done, so thank you, everybody. Thank you for your ongoing support. Let us know how we can help from you. And we're in this together. This is a great place to do what we all do, but it's not one of those things where we can check the box and know that it's done. It's a constant battle. So thanks again. Mike, I just gonna nod in.
No, it's good. Okay, yeah, no, I think this is important for our association to come alongside the Ames Alliance. Yeah, this is important for our industry for sure, and it's important for not only us as businesses, but also housing and getting more affordable housing for our employees. We've got employees that are driving from West Marshall. We've got employees that are living in Ankeny, and just because there's not options here in Story County, well, in Ames for sure, and so having more options and coming alongside and encouraging industry to come into town is important. So as an association, we're going through some strategic goal planning right now as a board. And part of that is developing advocacy not only for working with the Alliance, but also with our cities. And so working with the city of Ames, being more of a proponent and working with our city and kind of teaming up and encouraging them to provide more opportunities for us. So that, along with membership outreach, just being able to be in our community, serving our community. So there'll be opportunities that come up for you and your employees, and then also networking events. Okay, so where we can start, everybody can continue to meet each other and talk. Those will be coming up, and then also education. And so providing opportunities for not only us as businesses to learn, but our employees to learn as well. And so coming up on February 13th, we have a fall prevention seminar that the National Home Builders Association is coming in. They're providing it. they're flying a couple guys out, and they'll be doing a fall prevention seminar. It's something that Stacy worked on. She kind of got it spearheaded. She talked to Dan with the Des Moines Home Builders, and we're teaming up with them. I believe it's going to be taking place at Kinsler's, so they'll be hosting that in Ankeny. So that's an opportunity for you and employees to go there. So spots are limited, so make sure you get signed up for that, February 13th. February 14th, we have a legislative coffee that we'll be doing, trying something a little different in the morning. And then May 9th, we'll be having our spring golf outing, so make sure you get signed up for that. Has sign up started for that? Okay, so sign up started for that. And then we'll be adding more events in the coming months and weeks. With that being said, I'd like to thank First National Bank, Scott and his team, Buffy, Luke, and Joel back there, and Eric. Thanks a lot for having us out and hosting here today, and we appreciate the spot. So, all right.